Hey guys, Crimson Glow here, and this video is going to be a little different. Usually when talking about character building, I'm not talking from experience, but from things I've researched and observed. A lot of this, however, is going to be based on personal experience as well as other people's accounts. I'll try to be using a lot of evidence to support my claims, but this is mostly personal experience. I'll be using a lot of evidence to support it, but for the most part, this is all experience. Are we good? We're cool? Let's get started. Special thanks to our patrons on Patreon, ChronoCast9, Transformer Brett, and DBirch1. If you're at all curious on how to become a patron, look in the description below or go to patreon.com/crimsonglow. We have benefits like early access to videos, custom icons, Patreon-only polls and content, and so much more. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and press that little bell icon in the corner there. Now it's time for our regular scheduled programming. For those of you who don't know, I actually play a lot of tabletop role-playing games. Now some of you might be wondering what that exactly means, so let me try my best to explain it. A tabletop role-playing game, or tabletop RPG, is a game of pretend where there is a pre-existing world and story, and you have created a character to go on an adventure in this story, while one person is basically acting as God and dictating your story's path. You build your character off of classes, races, and feats, and to see how powerful or weak they are. Most of what you do and how well you do it revolves around dice rolls. The higher you roll, the better you do. But the lower the roll, the worse you do. This can be as big as expertly getting someone to help you defeat the big bad. This could also be as idiotic as getting an entire town to hate you because someone decided to be chaotic stupid. I'm not salty. No, not at all. I don't know what you're talking about. No, I don't know. Moving on. The God player, or game/dungeon master, controls the world and tries to kill their players. I'm only kinda kidding about that last part, but they will roll for each enemy and stress out the players as well as themselves because the characters went so off of the main storyline that they have to now scrap everything they were planning and then plan an entirely new campaign 5 minutes before they actually have to do the next session. I digress though. The modern version of tabletop RPGs come from the 1970s with the introduction of chainmail, which eventually became part of the structure for Dungeons & Dragons. The first actual tabletop RPGs are Empires of the Petal Throne and Dungeons & Dragons in 1974. It started out as a fun, hobbyist activity, but since cinema capitalized on nerd culture around the early to mid-2000s, they have now become a household name. D&D almost being a generalization of tabletop RPGs, even though it's a brand. Please do not sue me, D&D. So then, why are these so popular? If you look up D&D or campaign on YouTube, the likelihood of you finding something like Critical Role, Warhammer 40k related stuff, and compilations of D&D TikToks are very high. In fact, I actually did do that while writing the script, and it was insane how immediate it was. I think a lot of what makes it popular is that you're allowed to write your own story, and you have the freedom to create your own characters. It's very similar to playing a video game, but it's more social and you're given so much more freedom and you're able to use your imagination in ways that you normally wouldn't. I mean, you could roleplay the characters, I guess, but the programming is so set in stone usually that the story only gives you maybe 2 or 4 options to go by. If you're lucky, that is. Tabletop campaigns are where some of the craziest stuff happens. With that freedom, tabletop campaigns can be some of the craziest stories. As I've said before, I've played in a lot of these games. I've played in Fluff Dragon's Pokemon Mystery Dungeon campaign, a few Pathfinder games, 2 Burning Wheel campaigns, and a few others. These campaigns have definitely influenced my writing, and when writing for The Spectre or the upcoming Dr. Flame series of the RBComics channel and SoundCloud, I'll post those links into the description below. Some of you might be wondering, why should I even care? Plenty of amazing writers and artists have actually done an amazing job without role-playing. So why should I? Well, let me ask you this. When was the last time you were accused of making a Mary Sue and her brother Gary? I know I have, and it's really hard to break those habits when you don't know how to in a believable way. So in this video, I'll be giving a few ways that RPGs have actually helped me as a writer.
Now this is the plan. Get your ass to Moss.
So let's go back to that Mary Sue example again. A lot of the time, when you're making something like fanfiction with an OC in it, you're going to make a character that's similar to yourself or other existing characters that you like. Sometimes this happens, and it's more likely that you either attach this character to other characters, or make them way too idealized for your audience to really relate to. To be fair, that's a power trip. Power trips aren't supposed to be that deep to begin with. They're supposed to be just fun and dumb. Lancelot from King Arthur's mythos, on the other hand, is a great example of a Gary Stew. Based on his actions when originally brought into the mythos, the character didn't really have many, if at all, flaws, and any flaws that he did have were characterized as good. Having a secret love affair with your best friend's wife is covered under courtly love at the time, for example. He's got a special lineage and raised by a super powerful mythical woman. Historically speaking, this is interesting because it contextualizes the thoughts of what was happening at the time, as well as elements of the mythos that will be changed later. Now, if you wrote this today, this character would have been incredibly pretentious and irritating to your audience. Because everything this character does is good, or is characterized as good, this makes the character bland and uninteresting. It's only until later, when Lancelot and Guinevere's acts are brought up as a flaw, that we really give a damn about this love triangle from a modern setting. Now, how does tabletop RPGs help with the flaws being actual flaws? Well, I'll tell ya. It's because you're not really given any other characters in this world. You are given a completely blank slate. No true character to go off of at all. In D&D, this comes in the form of traits. Traits can either be personality-based or racially based. In D&D, this comes in the form of personality traits, bonds, ideals, background features, and flaws, while most physical abilities are racially based. But wait, didn't you say that tabletop RPGs give you a blank slate? This all sounds like stuff that you can make in a pre-existing character. And you'd be half right, you contradicting voice to my argument. The difference here is that you're working off of a trope, which is something that's very different that every writer does. This gives you a blank slate to build a character, plus they are so general that it gives you the freedom as the player and the writer to customize it how you want to. Of course, you can base it off of some pop culture character. There are plenty of videos and articles telling you how to create a character based on these characters in a D&D format. This gives you a better view on what the characters can be and how they can change. Now, something that I do in relation to picking out new characters, whether it's Pathfinder, D&D, Burning Wheel, is two things. I either roll my dice randomly for each trait, each little class that I get, I roll randomly. Or I try to do something I've never done before. That's what I did for Shemi from the Lightbringer campaign I'm currently doing, and Kaiba Ago from Fluff Dragon's Pokemon Mystery Dungeon.
I am Buzz Lightyear. I'm Buzz Lightyear.
So, who's the real Buzz?
I am.
One of the biggest benefits of playing D&D is that it's primarily a group project. You're there as a character amongst a group of other main characters. Now, if your DM is doing it right, your story should not be any more or any less important than the rest of your party. Because as I said, this is a group project, and you can observe other ways that people write their characters and adapt it to your own style. It also allows others to look at how you write and either correct or compliment what you're doing and telling you maybe what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. But I can hear you saying, though, hey, what if it's just my style? Writing and art are subjective, so why can't my character be an orphan that's raised by a water lady spirit mom who's totally the chosen one in my story? Now give me my macchiato. Well then, Karen or Jessica, you better be able to defend your style. It could actually help you to understand why you're using certain tropes more than you use others, and just to know and expose things about yourself that maybe you haven't noticed before. Open up different avenues to your writing that you didn't realize before, and if you can't defend it with anything more than, maybe it's because I just like, this plot point in my backstory, or I just like it, okay? Then there's something wrong. It's also important to note something else about D&D, which is that this is a group. There are different characters who process the same thing differently. Each character will contrast and complement each other in a different way, because as I've tried so hard to make people understand, not everyone will get along or agree all the time. This can also make great role-playing potential in your characters. For example, Kaiba Ago, a once level 20 Dragonborn fighter, but now a level 1 Axew fighter, at one point got mad when our Ashwat guide assumed that our party was crazy and she felt slighted. So she pointed out why that was uncalled for and how it was insulting for the guide to dismiss us so easily, defining Kaiba as a morally upright character meant to keep everyone at least somewhat forward. Another example is with my character Shemi and my friend's character Ludus. You see, for context, Ludus is a half-elf rogue who was raising an elf child and was kind of a form of Robin Hood. If Robin Hood had horrible PTSD, lost his ability to speech, and also his left hand. Meanwhile, Shemi is a naive, overthinking, and overly logical sorcerer bard half-orc who was sheltered in a library by her guardian Reese all of her life. These two had never really interacted much before they left their destination. They are primarily strangers who happen to work together in the same party. But then they come to a new location where the rival guild of that area, the one rival to Ludus, is actually terrorizing the locals. At the same time, they were told that the library, Shemi's home, was also in trouble. Now this is where the fundamental argument happened. See, without giving everything away, Shemi and Ludus argued about the state of the mission. They were technically supposed to just head to the library, and this town was supposed to be a stop along the way. Shemi thought it would be more beneficial to just move on because they weren't equipped to do everything here, and this wasn't part of their mission. Ludus, on the other hand, wanted to stay because there were people that needed help. They needed to be saved, and no one else had the power to do so as they did. They fight about this for a while, and it ended up bubbling into personal attacks. Now, they do end up making up later, but this was our big aha moment. We never realized this beforehand, but our characters were actually total foils to each other. Ludus is the leader, while Shemi is his lancer. Chaotic good versus lawful neutral. Higher class versus lower class. Naive and curious versus experienced and stubborn. Via this disagreement, we were able to understand our characters better, as well as create a better way to process how these characters would and will interact in the future. Though, disclaimer, it is more beneficial to the game that your characters do in fact get along. Also, if you're allowing confrontation with the characters to affect your personal characterization with the player, that can also be an issue. But this also leads to my next point.
Can't be a shaman or a queen. Apprentice wizard is what you are.
So you've created the character on Aurora Builder or D&D Beyond website or manually through the books because you're a pretentious nerd! Now that's great. But wait, what are all these numbers and junk that I have to now put in my character sheet? What even is this? Well, you see, the thing about tabletop RPGs is the fact that they're still games. These numbers, or ability scores if you will be able to say how potentially good or bad you are at something. Even then, you're not going to be good at everything. If you were, it wouldn't be any fun. For example, Wizard uses any spell that is available for your level, whether it's conjuring, healing, or crowd control. However, you're lucky to make it past level 5, because you have no physical attributes to help you. The in-story reason for this is because they get their magic through their spell books and are nerds, where physical attacks aren't really necessary. Meanwhile, paladins are holy warriors that take an oath, and depending on that oath, you can make extremely powerful tanks with a few magical abilities here and there. Even with all this in mind, when it comes to spells, you have a limited amount to use per day. If you're a physical attacker, yeah, you might get the benefit of extra turn, that's fun, but, really, unless you're specialized in dodging or counterattack abilities, you're probably not really going to do much when the enemy hits you. This is the reason why we have teams of different classes.
Fear not, ranger, barbarian, magician, thief, cavalier, and acrobat.
Each team member is specialized in a certain thing. But also, it can be interesting to see how characters react when they don't fit into this well-balanced team.
You improvise, you adapt, you overcome.
Okay, so you have finally come to terms with the fact that you and your character are not perfect little flakes of gold among the snowflakes around you. What now? You play the character. Where's the script? There isn't one! Huh? Yeah, tabletop RPGs are actually centered around the idea of improvisation, also known as improv.
All right, and now we're going to play a game called Scenes from a Hat.
Improv, according to Google, is the act of creating and performing spontaneously without preparation or producing and making something with whatever is available. Basically, you know your characters and therefore know how they will react in certain situations, including how they would talk. What this does is basically make you think quickly about your character and the story that's ahead of you. I cannot emphasize how much tabletops have actually helped me with that, especially when I first started. True, I do have the ability to come up with ideas on the fly, but actually executing and knowing how my characters would react so soon was really hard. But improv has a very helpful ability to force you to think on your feet and continue the story without having to always second guess yourself. You don't have to stay in one place having to listen to the characters in your head. Instead, you speak as if the character is you and you bring it to a new dimension. It's very true what they say. Sometimes things that you say in your head don't sound the same as when you say it out loud.
Did you put your name into the goblet of fire, Harry?
Harry!
I protest!
Harry, did you put your name in the goblet of fire?
Even your alignments might change. For example, I talked a little bit about Shemi before, but let me just really delve into how the character has really evolved since her creation. Originally, Shemi was a half-orc who started out as a storm sorcerer sage, and at the time, I really wasn't happy with her. I just couldn't bring myself to like her character or see the potential in her. All I had was that she was raised in a library as an orphan, she was raised by a librarian elf, and she never went outside. Because she was never exposed to people her own age, she is now socially awkward as hell. Now she's been sent off for the first time in her life by Reese in order to see the world outside the books. Originally, the idea was that she was an NPC who just so happened to be dragged into an adventure. I thought it was a good challenge for me, but I just really didn't know what to do with her, and just the combination was really weird to me. Though it would have been a lot more helpful if I had read the book more thoroughly, but that's something else entirely. It actually showed in the gameplay too that I wasn't really interested in my own character, as I would just constantly send her from place to place, not really giving her things to do.
My character's name's like Rolf, and he's a guy.
Other than investigate the murder of a butler? Don't ask. After talking to my friend Vio, who plays Ludus, he gave my GM, an idea of the situation and scolded him for not noticing. The reason why was also because he was more focused on other characters and that some were neglected. In his defense, though, he can only do so much when I myself wasn't really that motivated. But after that, the mood in her just completely changed. She started showing character in places I hadn't really thought of. She took a bard in a second class, and I was able to develop her character a little more, especially her backstory, with the help of the DM. Instead of an orphan in a perfectly preserved library home, the other librarians thought of her as a nuisance. She had biracial issues in identity because there were no orcs or half-orcs that came to the library. Reese was an overbearing parent due to the loss of his wife and a whole bunch of other things I don't want to spoil because we actually want to send this out as a podcast. It was fascinating and different as well, completely different from the usual character I usually pick. Now she's probably one of my favorite characters, and I'm happy to see her go forward.
What if I don't?
Well, you have to.
But what if I don't?
So, if you're still asking why, because in any other media like comics and movies and books, you can make a character as powerful as you want, it just depends on the writer. Which is an argument that was brought up by Max Landis, who was quoting his father, John Landis.
There's something my dad made up, which is he told me when I was little and I was frustrated about rules in movies. He said, how do you kill a vampire? And I was like, stake through the heart, garlic, sunlight. And my dad was like, no, you can kill a vampire however the fuck you want because vampires don't fucking exist. You can make up rules for any kind of thing you want.
And that is half true. In those media, the fluctuation of personalities, powers, and public opinions change depending on who's writing and what time. Sometimes it doesn't matter how you balance your character because the way you write them can view their powers as a non-issue. However, the problem is that your character should still struggle and have faults. In the Star Wars latest trilogy, Rey is considered a Mary Sue because the way that the later movies portrayed her was that she was an idealist and everyone else failed her with no fault of her own. The new series was supposed to be a reflection of the original trilogy, but they took away what made Luke's journey so special. See the D&D alignment video of Kylo Ren and Rey for a better look at this character. And there's nothing wrong with giving a character faults. Max Landis, who is infamous for unflattering reasons, is also known for his work with Superman in Superman American Alien, a comic book series where it lasted about 7 issues about Superman's life growing up. In this, we as a public consciousness know that Superman is the most powerful character in the superhero world and is probably kind of Moses-ish, kinda, not really. And in Landis' story, he actually writes Clark as incredibly human and not always well-liked, which is something I think people take out of context. Yes, in any other media, you can make a character as powerful as you want them to, but that doesn't mean you're going to make them more perfect with the more power they have. Nor does that mean that you're going to establish a world where people would realistically react to this character, or vice versa. Some of those who have probably looked up customizable tabletop videos or have seen TikTok videos probably know about homebrews. Homebrews are basically stories, classes, and/or systems that are partially or completely made up by the DM, players, or other people. Dingo Doodles, if you notice, has a lot of homebrew classes and races such as Magical Girl and Foreclaimer made by her DM Felix. Here's the thing though, these are really hard to do because it's still a game and they still need to be balanced. Everything that's good about a class or race has to have something negative about it in order to make the character or class not a nightmare to play. If a character can do everything, what's the point in any of the other characters? Even in a stream with Dingo Doodle and Felix explicitly states.
Yeah. Well, when you create something, you don't want it to be overpowered. So whenever you give like a bonus, you gotta balance it out with something that's maybe a bit weaker. You know, in the case of like Foreclaimers, they don't have dark vision because they deal so much with sunlight. So they lost that over time and those kind of things.
Yeah. In fact, you'll find that a lot of times where people talk about getting homebrews in a tabletop system, that they try to balance it out. To look at something like that for balance, look at Kenkuo. His entire channel is about balancing elements related to tabletops as well as just fun stories from people's campaigns.
What did we learn, Palmer?
I don't know, sir.
I don't fucking know either.
So, tabletop RPGs are very useful tools for developing yourself as a writer. They do take a lot of intense research and in-depth character analysis to do, but it's important to do that as a writer anyway. It gives you a blank slate to kind of work off of as a character in an already pre-made world. It socializes your writing style as well as makes you observe other people's writing styles and storytelling for their characters. Tabletop RPGs are able to help you understand what balancing characters actually means, both as a power set as well as personality. While you don't need D&D to do that, because it is a commitment. It's a commitment. These are different things to observe while understanding tabletop RPGs. These are some tabletop RPG groups here on YouTube that I think that would be really fun to observe. However, there are also the options of one-shot games that you can use to help yourself out. There are a lot of things that I neglected to mention or didn't go over a lot of, like dice rolls and alignments, but you know what? If you think that this is something worth me continuing or you want to talk about something else I might have missed, please comment below and tell me exactly what you think I should cover next. This has been your future evil overlord, Crimson Glow, and if Crimson Glow had a D&D class, that would be Warlock. She'd be a Warlock. Alright, hey everyone, it's me again. I just wanted to let you guys know I have merch available on my Redbubble where I am actually selling some merchandise of my art. At the moment of writing the script, I think I only have 5 love languages thumbnail that's available right now, but that might change since then. The link will also be in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching and supporting us. I couldn't be more grateful to my audience, and I just hope that I'm able to expand my channel more as I'm reaching those 2,000 subscribers. And you also know what that means. It's Q&A time again, and it's coming soon. Please ask your questions about me, about Sanguine, to the editor, even the editors of the video. Just go crazy with the questions. Just Please make them appropriate. Please. Thank you again so much for watching, and please stay safe out there.
Don't you know you never split the party? Clerics in the back, keep those fighters hale and hearty. The wizard in the middle, where he can shed some light. And you never let that damn thief out of sight.
The Eye of Odin opens up. 16 titties fall out.
Yeah!